I'm a dear friend of mine, and I would say of the intellectual world and the concerned citizens part of the human society, and that's being Stephen Eric Bronner, PhD, and he is the professor of political science and as an intellectual of a high order, and he's here to talk on the 25th of September 2013 about the state of the world with particular reference, I think, to the Middle East and some of the things going on in Syria and so forth. And Stephen, so good to welcome you to
see you.
Always good to see you,
Always
Stephen.
Always a pleasure.
And maybe you could just share quickly your background, your background intellectually. You got a huge resume and you've got a great deal of work you've done, written books, but a little quick survey. And then let's talk about things here on the 25th of September 2013.
Sure. I started out at City College in New York, and I got my BA there, and then I went to the University of California at Berkeley and got my PhD there.
What year?
I got the PhD in 1975.
Boy, it was right in the middle of the summer of love and all that. Berkeley was a happening place, Mario Savio and all that.
I was a little bit
after that,
but,
yeah.
But yeah, it was. And I originally did work on, basically on theories of revolution and mass movements. But it was more or less in Europe. And I published some stuff on that. And then I wound up moving over to sort of dealing with the Middle East and Africa through an interest in human rights. And I wound up in Iraq with U.S. Academics for Peace.
Yes. You're involved in that for some time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Chairman of a committee or chairman?
I'm the executive chair, yeah.
No, good for you. Okay,
Thank
good. Academics for Peace.
Yeah, U.S. Academics for Peace.
That's an important institution by name alone. It's important.
Like
very, very important.
So.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, right. Particularly now, yeah.
So, we were in Iraq a month before the war.
Wow.
And we put together a set of petitions. I mean, it didn't help, but it was pretty interesting. And I learned a lot. And then we've done various missions of civic diplomacy to Darfur, to in the Sudan, and also to Syria. Actually, I met Assad. I met President Assad with a delegation. And that's where I am now. And I've been trying to do some work with the Syrian community and also do some work on civic diplomacy with Syria. Hopefully, we'll be able to go over to Damascus at some point.
Yeah, you've written a lot. You've written books. You had some about peace. There was a book.
Well, there's one, Peace Out of Reach.
Yeah, Peace Out of Reach. That was the Middle Eastern look at the Middle East. Yeah. Discouraging title in a sense.
Indeed.
Okay, yeah.
Comes from Bob Dylan's Time Out of Mind.
Oh, is that where that's from? I didn't realize that. Yeah, okay, yeah.
So that's where things are, and I'm hoping that that actually peace might be on the agenda.
Wow.
In the Middle East.
It's been going lickety-split like a pinball machine over these last couple of weeks, hasn't it?
Yes,
Seemed like one thing after another, because there came up, maybe we can go back a couple months or something, but there are these there's this uprising among some, and we don't know who they are and what's behind it and everything in Syria. There's been going 100,000, is it that? Is it that many that have been killed in violence there? And then there came up that attack where there were so many killed by chemical weapons, apparently, and all of that. And then and that's against a backdrop of Arab Spring, overthrow of Gaddafi, the things that are going on in Egypt. And then there was this thing where they had He's talking about delivering weapons. That is, Mr. Obama thinking of some sort of a retribution against them for these and then all of a sudden, out of Putin, there comes this thing where they're going to hand over the chemical weapons and then it brought in Iran, it's just like some sort of a real crazy quilt kind of very quick happening thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and that I think is what happens when revolutions become transnational. You know, there's a whole tradition of this. It's not just the Middle East. This happened in Europe in the 1840s, and it happened. You can even see the Russian Revolution as having an international dimension.
Yeah.
And this goes very fast, and that was part of the story with Bashar Assad, which is the Arab Spring breaks out.
Yeah.
It inspires young people and dissidents of different sorts in Syria wanting to...
And it started in Tunisia, it seems to me.
Started in Tunisia, yeah. And it spread very rapidly. Yeah. And in any event, in Syria, it grew. There was a demand that President Assad make good on his promises of elections, and protests began against the emergency decrees, which kept President Assad in power. We kept his family in power. It's been the case for 40 years. Well, the Alawites is the religion to which he belongs, which is a branch of Shia.
Yeah, it is Shia.
Yeah, it's
and that Shia is a division that seems to have real meaning in terms of the overall Arab and Islamic world. Seems to have. Yeah.
I think the way you can conceive of it is. You know, you go back a few hundred years in European history and you think of the conflicts between Protestants and Catholics.
Right.
Both saw themselves as Christians, but in certain cases they fought to the death.
Oh, yeah, horrible. Religious wars were horrible. I mean, yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually one of those things where I think we should have a little bit of humility before,
pointing our finger.
We are not exactly the ones to be pointing fingers at. You know, you think of the religious wars, the 100 Years' War, the 30 Years' War, the 16th, 17th century.
Yeah.
That's a third of Europe was killed.
Yeah. I mean, staggering, like the plague. Yeah. It's horrible.
So, at any rate, when the protests broke out in Syria, there was a choice for Assad to make, either to give in or to react, and he reacted harshly.
If he had given in, he would have abdicated and handed it over to whoever it is that was making the revolution and so forth, and say, well, I've been wrong, and that would have been a big thing for him to do.
He could have probably said, well, I'll run for election. When I met him, he said, I'm dying to get out of power. So, I mean, that's certainly not true. But he did say one thing.
Isn't he a dentist?
No, he's an ophthalmologist.
It's something science. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay,
And his wife is a banker.
Okay,
They're very impressive people.
And the Alawites and his father were with the Iron Hand, was an Alawite.
Yeah, well, his father was... the interesting thing is that Bashar Assad was greeted as a reformer when he first took power. He was seen as a breath of fresh air from coming from the West and the Western experience. His wife also grew up in England. And that didn't come to pass. The promises never were realized. But he did say something very interesting when we were there. It's in a way self-serving, but I think it's worth recounting.
I'm surprised a politician saying something self-serving. I'm shocked.
Yeah, it is
I'm surprised. I didn't think it ever happened.
More shocking that it's insightful.
Yeah, right. And
what he said was to our group, you've been out in the streets of Damascus. You've gone to cafes, you've gone to restaurants, and you've seen women in hijabs, headdress, traditional headdress, sitting right next to women in miniskirts. And we, of course, said yes, that we saw that. And to which he said, if I leave power, that's going to stop.
What I mean, he's saying there is some openness to variety and different thinking and thought. I don't quite know what that means, miniskirts and hijabs. I mean,
in other words, that there was a kind, beneath the political authoritarianism, there was a kind of cultural pluralism.
I see, okay.
And that,
exactly,
by the way,
well said, yeah.
That, by the way, was also the case with Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein, they had a lot going for Saddam Hussein, even though he was authoritarian.
Yeah, I mean, that's
60% of the Congress, I think, were women.
Yeah.
And he had huge development of all kinds of positive development socially and economically.
And there's no question about it. And
right. That's
the
part
case.
of the reason. That was maybe one of the reasons he was so, a threat. Maybe by example, I don't know. My favorite guy was Muammar Gaddafi, as you know, and I got a real brief against what NATO and they did against him, but that's for ideological reasons.
That certainly didn't turn out the way it was expected in Washington.
No, well, I think it's totally. I saw President Obama at the UN. I recorded and everything he was saying. And what are we going to do with Libya? We're going to leave it up to a tyrant like that. And I really think Muammar Gaddafi was ahead of history's curve, and that he could have been a threat at an ideological level. But that's another issue.
Yeah,
I don't think.
What plays in is that all of these conflicts, in a certain way, have a transnational quality. So for example, when Gaddafi fell from power, a lot of the arms, a lot of fighters, also extremist fighters, moved across the borders, and that's of some importance. As you know, Syria. The Syrian conflict gets translated into Lebanon.
Yeah, Hezbollah.
It's exactly the same.
Nasrallah, yeah.
And it's also in Palestine, where Hamas supported the rebels.
Yeah, particularly in Gaza. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And now
and things do come to revolve around the state of Israel in that part of the world, or can come. Or it does in the minds of many.
I was just asked to do a piece on. An article on the one or two state solution.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll do it, but I'll do it on the obstacles to both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the obstacles is, I think, a kind of self-inflation on both sides, by the Palestinians and the Israelis, of the importance of their conflict for the rest of the Middle East.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
I actually don't see that conflict as crucial to the Arab Spring.
Okay.
The place you would expect it to be the strongest would be in Egypt, because of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right.
And you'd think they're going to be terribly anti-Israel. In a way they were.
Yeah.
But they were also open to being bought off by the American aid. And
military,
and there's, how should I say, this continual focusing on Israel and Palestine, especially what does Israel think? I was on a show with a different show with a former UN person who specialized on the Palestinian conflict, and we started talking about Syria, started talking about Egypt, and then one of the other panelists said, and what about Israel? And afterwards, my friend said to me, why does it always have to be Israel? What does this have to do with it? And in a way, that's true. If you bracket for the moment that the United States, that politicians in the United States are concerned with a voting bloc of Jews, and actually evangelicals give more money to Israel than AIPAC.
You know Norton Mizvinsky? Are you close with Norton? Do you know that?
No.
He writes really well on Syria.
Yeah, I mean,
he was a major professor talking on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, I see one of the obstacles is that both Israel and the Palestinians have inflated their conflict to the point where this is the central issue.
Well, okay.
I don't think it is.
You do not? Okay, that's interesting. I can see it be seen from the standpoint of Islam or from the standpoint of Arab or Islam as just like a European neo-colonial invasion into their territory.
Yeah, I mean,
it's the Western imperialism, the WOG syndrome, and all the rest of it.
I'm totally with you.
Yeah. So why do you see it not that way?
No, I don't see that. No, maybe I misspoke. I understand the concern with the Israeli occupation. Israel has now been a state with
superpower.
With occupied territories longer than it was a state without occupied territories.
And it's a superpower. It can walk with big loose and do whatever it wants in the name of political power.
I think to a degree that's true because of the
They seem to be doing it. They're building settlements in Jerusalem against the wishes of Tell America to go. We don't want to hear your carping criticism. We'll do what we damn well please. Seems to be the attitude of Netanyahu and Israel as a whole. We're the winners, you're the losers, and get used to it. More or less is their attitude. So I could see where somebody would take exception to that, meaning that not only the Palestinians, but the extended Islamic world.
As I say, I don't deny that that Israeli colonialism is really a bad thing, and that the Gaza blockade and so on, that's a disgrace, and the settlements and the dragging its feet on negotiations. I agree with all that.
And then also booming as an economy. They're just booming with entrepreneurial activity and making the desert bloom and all these kind of positive indices and so on.
Making the desert bloom has given way to creating high-tech stuff for telephones.
Entrepreneurial development and everything.
But I'm not denying that. What I'm suggesting, though, is that the impact of this on other events, like the Arab Spring, it's inflated.
You think so?
I think so.
It has been there over the last decade.
It has.
Major thing in terms of the Arab and Islamic world.
But what we've seen now is that, I think anyway, what we've seen now is that what is seminal to the conflicts in the Arab world now is the Sunni-Shia conflict.
That's very interesting to me.
Number one.
Yeah. So there you got Iran, Hezbollah.
And you got two sides, sort of.
And then you got Saudi Arabia and Qatar and that. So to understand that, we should try and understand, and Iran, of course.
And what that
means. We should try and understand that.
And we don't.
It seems that way, We lump them all together or something, or think it's just a minor little thing, but it's a major thing in their own terms.
Indeed. And there's a consequence of this. If the real conflict is between Shia and Sunni, then the conflicts can't simply be broken up into states.
I see,
This becomes a transnational situation.
Oh, I see. Back to your transnational. Okay, good enough. Right.
And on top of that, the difficulty is, especially for the United States and the United States foreign policy, is it's used to dealing with states and engaging in state building.
The nation state has been the thing after dynastic states,
But the state, I mean the nation state, is a Western import.
Absolutely.
To that area. And when people talk about failed states or fragile states or what have you, in a certain, or even bureaucratic corruption, in a certain way, this is all a function of the fact that the state never emerged indigenously.
Much less a nation.
Right. And what happens is you have these, for most people, especially out in the countryside, loyalty is less to the nation state.
And it's the tribe.
The tribe or the religion or the family, and these can all interconnect.
Right. Subnational, really,
And one of the things I really think with regard to the United States intervening, this is a situation, it's not only that we don't have the wisdom to decide for the world and so on, we also simply don't have the knowledge. I don't know anyone.
Nor the model that is relevant to what the future requires or allows newly in a way that is being sensed around the world, which is part of an awakening of the human society, not just the Arab awakening or something like that. It's awakening to a crisis that is infusing the consciousness of the world society, our political leadership is moribund in terms of outdated institutions. Maybe. I don't know.
Now consider, the rebels in Syria. There were 33 groups.
Oh, tell me, because I don't know. Some of that's Al-Qaeda, some of it is...
right. Now, you say you don't know. Why? How can anybody really know?
Yeah, right.
From the outside.
Yeah, right.
You know, the intricacies
I can hardly know Brooklyn in the way it's broken up.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a level of complexity and a sort of a certain hidden set of ties and bonds and interconnections and rivalries.
Right.
I mean,
way back.
This goes way back.
They're arguing that in Croatia and stuff, or back in they're going back 1,000 years. They're talking about
everybody points to Kosovo and as this great success. I mean, the reality of the situation is that there are American troops still there.
Yes,
this has been going on forever.
And talk about Hatfields and McCoy kind of things go back 1,000 years. So I mean, it's not intrinsic. It's not just other places. It's also intrinsic, maybe to the human condition.
And the dangers with, sometimes you're in a situation where you have two sides which are both shaky, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
Assad has acted disgracefully and scandalously with the way
police state tactics.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. On the other hand, it's not as if the Free Syrian Army is composed of saints. The fact that this is so fragmented, what that means is, I think, what it means is, or what's usually the case is when you have a big movement and it's very fragmented among different groups, the group that's the most centralized, and organized comes to the top. And that is Al-Qaeda. That's the al-Nusra.
Yeah, they got all these kind of things that they just had a group up in northern Syria into Lebanon declared the emirate of there, and it's Al-Qaeda type. You got this thing down in Kenya that just happened again, and they held out for days and everything against what had been out of the Sudan and that. So the Al-Qaeda, the Islamist kind of thing. And they had some people from the United States or from Europe that were in that group in Kenya.
This is, once again, the transnational.
So it's transnational objection on Islamic principles to the way the world is operating. And it seems to be transnational and maybe a real threat to the world.
When I was in Sudan, we were supposed to meet with Hassan Turabi.
Okay.
Who was a religious leader.
Okay.
We didn't meet with him.
Okay.
He was fundamentally opposed to any Western negotiations at that time.
Right.
But here he is in the Sudan, and by familial connection, he's related to Osama bin Laden.
Okay, familiar.
I mean, this is,
Now,
who would? I mean, super experts would know this. But it's not super experts who make policy. It doesn't work that way.
No, it's not. They are just advisors to the people who make the policy, and the policy has their life of its own and that sort of thing. I wonder if we can go to that Shia, Sunni and that, and like Shia is associated with Iran, certainly in a major way, because, and that goes back, Iran goes back 5,000 years. It goes back. They had Mithra. They had a feature, a spiritual leader Mithra that predated monotheistic Judaism in Ur. It goes way back, way back in terms of the roots. And also they've got the Shia, and as I understand it, I'm a Westerner, I don't understand it really well, but in a certain sense, the Shia have a belief in what's called the 12th or hidden Imam. So that is a keeping with the prophetic tradition that was characteristic of, let's say, the Jewish perspective, who did not accept Jesus as the Messiah or Moshiach or the one who's going to usher in the moment of truth, but that it's keeping in touch with the prophetic tradition of in the future it's going to emerge in a certain sense like that. And that's like the prophetic tradition that Constantine 300 made a pact with power, with religion, with Christians for power in the Roman condition. So and then the Sunni are in favor of not in the system that is in place in a certain sense. It's conservative in that sense of what's in place.
Well,
that's a conflict that is.
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia and Qatar and that.
Yeah.
And that's the bulk of the Islamic world. So the Shia are, and now the Shia, the ones that are making the real trouble, Al-Qaeda, seem to be Shia. Am I right in that, or are they mixed, or what is the relationship?
It depends.
Because we started off talking Shia and Sunni, so we ought to understand that relationship. And does it relate to what are the real threats? They're called moderates, right? The new guy in Iran calls himself a moderate now. And a moderate would be somebody who can get along with the system that the United States Western model has imposed upon the world as good for all time, which may not be, which is another question. But all these things are mixed up, and how do we deal with the reality that is real?
In my view, right?
Yeah.
There's a difference between religion and religious institutions on the one hand, and faith and religious traditions on the other.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think what we have to begin with here are really the institutions.
Okay.
And these they're political, they're cultural, they're social, but at some level, the conflict between Shia and Sunni isn't one set of good guys and one set of bad guys. In Syria, Iran supports officially the Alawite group that's headed by Bashar al-Assad.
And Nasrallah in Lebanon.
Yeah.
And he's a major force.
Yeah. On the other hand, it's not as if Saudi Arabia is somehow averse to using violence or averse to using its power. It may do it in different ways. It's very rich.
Okay, yeah.
There's probably no country
yeah.
hated in the Middle East that I know more than Saudi Arabia.
Really, you think? Yeah, really.
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
That's sort of a common, a common thing.
Wahhabism that's Sunni.
Wahhabism,
and it's
Sunni.
very conservative. And what does it mean to be conservative Islam? I mean,
that's a very good question, and that is really a good question. And what I think it is, and I mean this could be my own bias, but I think to be conservative in terms of Islam is no different in a certain way than to be conservative in terms of Judaism or Christianity.
The same kind of.
Yeah. It means that. In some way, you react against, or as a conservative, you oppose modern developments.
Right. Okay. There you get into
diversity, individualism,
and you get back to that good old religion, and and a literal translation of it. And I've had people talk about Howard Bloom. You know Howard Bloom.
Sure.
He's a major intellect. He says that Muslim, and you read other things that it was done with great. Religious fervor to the absolute that the other prophets that have been announced were all fake, but you got the real word of God in the Quran, and the Quran.
That's not true.
This is what he says, okay, and that it was a violent kind of conquest that was done that made possible for the expansion of that empire that was larger than any other that had ever been done. It was based on violent interpretation of the violence of the Muhammad and the Islamic religion as it comes up in the Quran.
From what I know, I'm no expert, but I do know that Islam has respect for Jesus and it has respect for Moses.
Well, that's what they claim,
yeah.
Or maybe the people that are the moderates do.
Well,
that's what he's trying to say. Is it's this strain of getting back to the old-time religion, the real religion, that is causing the violent reaction to, because it's the word of God.
Yes, I mean, and
that's dangerous.
But that's no different, really, than our kind of fundamentalists.
Well, perhaps so.
If you think of the Bible,
right.
The Old Testament, I mean, all you
they worry me.
Yeah,
they do worry me. Yeah, right. Because we've got God mit uns was on the belt of every army that ever went out and killed people, babies, and stuff. Yeah.
This is I mean, I don't think there's much new about that. What's new in a certain way is, and this is, I mean, I could be totally wrong on this, but I think in a certain way, it's the fear of modernity that creates the fundamentalists.
Okay.
The Muslim Brotherhood is a recent phenomenon.
Yeah,
it's not
is it really? Okay.
Oh, yeah. It emerged in Egypt.
Yeah, but it's 100 years old or so, isn't it? No?
Tops.
Really? Okay.
No, it's actually, it's not even 100 years old.
Okay, okay.
I'm trying to think on whether it
Well, that is pretty new.
It's,
we got against 5,000 years of existence.
And what we have is, the modernity has come in such a rapid way.
Yes, right. And that's unsettling to many.
To many.
Including myself sometimes.
Yeah. And, you can imagine in these very traditional societies, you don't have an indigenous capitalist development.
Right.
All the stuff that we think of in the United States.
Take for granted.
I mean, this is not simply universal.
Yeah, right.
And
I think you're onto something there. Yeah.
And it seems to me also, for example, the protests for moderate Islam, and that for democracy and diversity and respect for women, they're located in the cities.
Everywhere. Okay, that's interesting too.
Whereas the support for the traditionalists, and that's true
in the outback,
or in the countryside. By the way, that's true of the United States.
Yeah,
also.
I think it is, isn't it? That's interesting.
Interesting,
right? Yeah.
And it's certainly true for both Sunni and Shia. I mean, there's no difference there.
Okay.
And this is why I say.
So Al-Qaeda, or what do they call that group in Kenya? Is Shabbat or something, or what the ones they're not either Sunni or Shia. That is not a distinction that relates to the radical, violent, prone terrorist elements within the Islamic world. It's not one or the other.
Right.
I mean, they're both.
Well,
Shia and Sunni, and
Al-Qaeda is really more Sunni than it is Shia.
It is, okay.
Yeah. Osama, of course, came out of the Wahhabi tradition in
and what is
Saudi
that?
Arabia.
That's Sunni.
That's Sunni.
Yeah, but it's very radical.
Yeah.
His version of it. Okay,
And then, of course, you have Shia, who are also very radical. I mean,
there are radical elements, and then there are moderate elements.
Exactly.
So it's like the world.
It's that's the most...
And modernity,
You see, and that's the most difficult thing, I think, to understand. When we talk about Islam, and we sort of just say, well, Islamofascism.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's silly.
Yeah.
Because
it's so varied. Yeah.
It's fundamentally split. Yeah. There are fascist tendencies in Islam. There are also fascist tendencies
in capitalism
and in Christianity.
Right.
And in Judaism.
Right. It's the human condition. Yeah. Right. Unfortunately,
this is like an institution, or religion is an institution that's affected by various trends.
Yeah.
It doesn't somehow emerge sacrosanct.
Right.
And somehow insulated from the world.
That's what I think the radical, at least this is Howard talking, and he seems to be, is that the actual reading of the words that are just absolutely, you have nothing more needed except the words, and the word is violence. To conquer the world is the reading of the Quran. I've not read the Quran. I don't know the Quran or anything like that. But that could be a culturally induced thing in the part of an individual who has a brief against Islam for other reasons, because he has a conflict with some economic law. I tend to always look at something economic to find conflict.
I think it's focusing on the wrong thing.
Okay, good. We should focus on, as you were saying.
Consider.
Yes, sir.
When you think of communism, and you think of sort of dogmatic communism, you know how they justified themselves if an issue came up in the early days?
Go to Marx.
You go to Marx, you go to Lenin, you find a citation,
right.
You use that to justify something which has no relation to the citation at all.
That's interesting.
That's exactly what conservatives do, or dogmatists do within religious institutions.
I think that happens in China.
That happens everywhere.
I think in China, their religion almost is Marxism. The fellow that's in charge now is coming out, the new guy. His area of expertise, dialectical materialism. I mean, Marx is their thing. They have Qigong, where you can get health things from doing it. Yeah. But if you relate it to Lao Tzu or anything spiritual, they don't, because it threatens the power structure that the Communist Party holds in the name of Karl Marx from Germany. I can't understand this world sometimes.
But now observe. Well, consider. You have one interpretation or one institutional development that uses Marx as an ideology. And uses Marx as an ideology. You look at the text.
Yeah, right. Just like the good old religion. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, right.
On the other hand, you have tendencies, or there were tendencies in the Marxist-inspired labor movement that were very libertarian, open-minded, democratic.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you get with religion.
You pay your money, you take your choice, is more or less the term.
I mean, I'll tell you something. In Germany, in the Marxist labor movement of the 19th century, say 1875 to 1914, that's something I know something about.
Yeah, you do, I know,
there was a greater range of debate and opinion than exists now in the United States. Really. There were newspapers, there were magazines, there were comic books. There was an entire public sphere in which there was debate over basic issues. Is the working class growing or isn't it growing?
Right.
Those were things that were debated. Debated in public.
Yeah.
And what should we be supporting in terms of reforms, or should we be involved in revolution? Or this was all done publicly, through newspapers, through public conventions, political conventions. I mean, that's the otother side.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you can have a kind of authoritarian Marxism where, Lenin, Stalin, Mao, where the emancipatory spirit is just drained out of the entire enterprise.
Yeah, right.
But that's true with religion too.
So where do you take it all now? We got about 20 minutes left, okay? And where do we take it all? Where are the major fault lines? What's likely to develop? What do you see in the Middle East? Is the deal with that Mr. Putin has brought, like a rabbit. He pulled a rabbit out of the hat and said, okay,
that's
now...
exactly what I was thinking as I was walking down here. That was the phrase
great
I was going to use. That's no question.
Yeah.
It seems to me that President Obama's policy with the Middle East is predicated on him making a mistake. And the mistake was talking about the red line.
Red line against Iran.
Now, in reality, as tragic as the use of chemical weapons was, there were 1,500 people killed.
I'm hip,
I mean, this war has taken about 100,000 lives plus.
You think that was all the result of things that Assad was in charge of, or was it?
No.
No. What, do you have any chapter and verse on how that actually happened? That 1,500 people killed by chemical weapons. Was that a government thing?
Yes.
It is. You've seen intelligence, and
so.
They seem to be saying that, but you learn not to necessarily trust what people
that's
say.
Also true.
I've learned to be a little wary of what our political leaders say. Do you think that's wise or not?
Yes, I think that's very wise.
Yeah. Okay.
And there were various people in the UN, important people, who questioned this.
Yeah.
I mean, but let's make the assumption that, which I think you can make, that President Assad did his troops did use the chemical weapons.
Could it have been a loose cannon down the chain of command or something?
It's very possible.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Go on. And just a thought.
So just assuming that the difficulty in which President Obama found himself was that he said, "This is the red line which we won't allow."
He had said that ahead of time of it happening in large dimension. Yeah.
So now
he was sort of stuck out on his own petard.
Yeah. So now. The chemical weapons are unleashed, and he's stuck. And so, well, what do you do? So basically, oddly enough, it's almost a neither war nor peace position that he developed.
Right.
It's just hit him, and it's
a little bit.
It's clear it's not going to change the outcome of the war.
Yeah.
It's also clear that the amount of damage is going to be
minimal.
Minimal. That the dangers are immense.
The political dangers are immense.
Immense. And Obama knows that. I mean, the man's not a fool.
No, not
He
at
knows that the majority of the American people don't want another.
Isn't it amazing how that's really come out? I mean, huge dimension. I've had enough of Iraq already and enough of Afghanistan. Right.
It's like everything that the United States has touched over there.
I felt the same about Libya. They went and bombed Libya for crying out loud. And NATO and CIA, DIA and shenanigans.
It's one of these things.
Imperialism.
It's the arrogance of power.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Who wrote that? Was that C. Wright Mills? No.
That was Senator William Fulbright.
Oh, Fulbright. Yeah, right. Okay, sorry.
Really, probably the last great voice on foreign relations that we had.
Okay. Yeah.
But in any event, so he's stuck.
Yeah.
And this is not a viable position.
Right.
I mean, he knows it. The Russians know it. Assad knows it.
Do you think he could have worked that out with Putin ahead of time?
I think that's exactly.
Do you think they could have done it at a bar and salute or something when they got together? Why don't you do that and that'll get you and
What I do think is that the proposal made by Foreign Minister Lavrov.
Yeah.
Was in a way an attempt to help Obama out of this.
Help Obama out of this, and also help Putin.
And also help Putin.
Yeah,
it's got to help Putin. Otherwise we don't do it.
No,
but it also helps Obama.
Yeah, right.
It gives him an exit.
But
strategy.
You don't think they hatched it in a men's room or a saloon somewhere?
I don't know.
It was so. You know what I mean? Because just boom, 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 it happened. And all of a sudden we're going to lob in cruise missiles, we're going to do this, all kinds of political problems. And then comes the thing he's going to do it. And it's been pretty mystifying for a political scientist to try and dope it out, I would think. But I suppose you got it all down cold.
No, I certainly don't have it down cold.
No.
But I do think this, that the Russian foreign minister, if I can put it this way, is one smart cookie.
Well, those are pretty smart people.
And this plan can really avert war.
Yeah, maybe.
It's very possible. I think if President Obama winds up in a situation where he continues negotiations with President Rouhani of Iran,
and he did have a period of restraint where his attitude was restraint toward just not going half-cocked. Yeah.
Look, at some
level, that's
advantageous.
advantageous.
At some level, certainly it's true that the use of the drone strikes and so on has been terrible.
That's a problem, don't you think?
Yeah, thousands of people died because of this.
Yeah, right. Isn't that sort of imperialistic and collateral damage?
Yeah.
And is that sustainable?
This is another situation in which, I think this is, by the way, where this idea of the strike against Assad comes from. Because the drone strikes, they don't produce anything either. It's neither war. I mean, there's no intervention.
You're right. You're right. That's an extension. Yeah, right. I hadn't thought of that, but that's true. Yeah. And also, you risk no loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, So it gives the
no human loss. On your side. Yeah.
But granting that, I think that Obama has withstood enormous pressure on Syria, and enormous pressure on Iran to bomb them. And that's a very laudable. That's a very laudable thing.
That is a biggie. Yeah. Right.
I mean, that's a biggie. And I think if he and Lavrov, or if Kerry and Lavrov, let me put it this way: they've been better secretaries of state. If Lavrov and Kerry, Putin and Obama, can in some way settle this on Syria,
the Syria thing,
get that exit strategy in order.
Right.
This will be a
major breakthrough.
Major breakthrough.
Maybe it could be for the
It'll be one of the most important things in Obama's presidency.
And what about Iran now? What about Iran? Because Iran,
I think that's for real.
And what do you think about
sides.
the change in the presidency and so forth, and the new fellow emerging? And what do you think of him? I taped his speech at the UN the other day.
I'll tell you what I know. I think that the new president it's for real. I think it's for real because they know that the old strategy just simply wasn't working. It was an economic disaster with the sanctions.
Okay.
Now, having said that, how do you know it's for real? One way, I think, was pretty clear, at least in a personal way. I'd been down to the Iranian mission. I've been to Iran 3 or 4 times.
Oh, have you? I didn't realize that. Yeah. More recently, or no?
Yeah, a few years ago.
Okay.
And I hope we're going to go again.
Okay, actually, with the
U.S. Academics for Peace and Conscience International.
Good, great. Yeah. Okay, that'd be wonderful. Yeah,
it would.
Yeah,
but the people we had to deal with in New York, former ambassador to the UN, a bit less so, but the consul that was here.
Okay.
Nasty.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Personality thing?
Personality,
at the personal level?
But also not the sharpest tack in the box.
Okay, okay. Sometimes those things go together, yeah.
The new people that have been brought in
with the new president.
Yeah.
Under his...
are first rate.
Oh, right. That's interesting.
And I thought that was very interesting.
Okay.
Because
that's only just happened.
It just happened, but...
Yeah. And you've already had liaison with them, and you sense that. That it's a better breed of cat that's there.
Yes, it's a better breed of cat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's very significant. I think it's very significant. And it seems to me that when you get to the point where you say publicly you're willing to engage in serious negotiations, and both presidents agree on this, and both secretaries of state, the new foreign minister of Iran, Foreign Minister Zarif, is another exceptionally sharp person. From everything that I've been told, I haven't met him yet.
Yeah.
But from everything that I've been told, he's exceptionally sharp. And I think we have to work on the assumption that this is for real, and coming from Iran. And I think it's also in our practical interest to do so.
You see that you're peace-oriented and so forth. There are elements,
but I think also
who want to keep the drums drumming. And I think a lot of that comes from Mr. Netanyahu and company.
Oh, yeah.
You don't think so? Don't you think that's a very real existential threat?
But it's interesting.
And they may want to run off the...
By the way, what is an existential threat?
Well, that means that it's an overwhelming kind of thing. But the existential threat, we can blow up the whole damn planet. That's the biggie now.
I'm scared of them. Therefore, therefore, this has to be taken seriously.
Right. Okay, I see what you mean.
I mean, that just doesn't wash. I mean, the way you justify
it's good propaganda, and you get money, and you get support, and everything through that kind of. Yeah.
But in terms of actually doing political analysis, citizens looking at the crisis and saying, or looking at the relations between these two countries and saying, trying to make sense of it, I mean, really, an existentialism. I did my dissertation on existentialism.
Did you really? Okay, come to the right guy. Right.
It speaks to individuals.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's about individuals, how they make sense out of
all
the
these
world.
national political leaders take it on as the core of their position. Yeah. Okay. No, but it's a philosophical thing.
It's a philosophical position.
Like, I think it's an existential threat that we have weapon systems. Tridents alone, I think, could destroy the species. That's sort of existential. It's not just another battle or equality. It's a qualitative challenge, not quantitative.
It's the way you experience it. In other words, if you see this as, I don't know, you get up every morning and you think, wow, this is going to go kaboom, which it might. Then it's an existential threat.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about societies facing
what about
governments facing no. There you have to be more concrete, and you have to show what is the real threat. The real threat. How does it speak to the national interest?
Okay.
How does it?
So it's not a question of qualitative or quantitative alteration in things. It's a quantitative thing. Well, if we lost 5 pigs, we could get away with that. But if we lost all 500, we'd really be, or something, or some sort of a thing that is qualitative.
Yeah, you got to in some way.
And what about this idea I just threw out there? We have weapons. Do you think it's true? You've studied things and everything. The weapon systems that exist largely in our control. Tridents alone. The tridents alone have incredible, maybe the weapon systems can destroy every single human being. Do you think that's true?
Yeah.
Would that be existential? Would it be willing to call that an existential threat to the evolutionary process? Would that be existential? You studied existential.
Yeah, I would say it's a real threat. I don't think you don't
have to make it
yeah.
Okay.
But
I see you've done a lot of work on existentialism. It's an important thing.
I'm not saying it's the greatest dissertation known to man.
Right. I'm glad somebody's paid serious attention to it, and I'm sorry I brought it up. But anyway, you think there might be something real coming out of it?
In fact, a book on Albert Camus. Who is often identified with existentialism.
Yeah, right.
But here's something that I don't think usually comes up. There were negotiations going on to lower the number of nuclear missiles between Obama and Putin. And with the Olympics and a set of other issues that came up, these negotiations sort of were paralyzed. It was a great hope to lower the because there were, in
at the height of it, we had tens of thousands of them. Crazy thermonuclear warheads.
And so there was an attempt to
run the arms race backwards.
But that sort of ground to a halt for a whole set of reasons. Now, if the Syria thing can be solved in an amenable way, maybe the next step would be for President Obama and President Putin to recommence the negotiations on the nuclear weapons.
Well, okay.
I think that would be an added benefit. I think that would be possible also.
To eliminate them and to
radically reduce them. I'm willing to go for radical reduction,
Are there other weapon systems that are coming along from black ops and so forth that go beyond, you know what I mean, wave weapons and things like this?
I just don't know.
Are we over that? That question I raised again, I think it was about, in 1962, I was never so scared in my life.
Right, that's an existential
Do you remember?
threat.
That was well, no, I would say that wasn't existential. In my way of thinking, Because as I understand it, Atwood and the people that were there with Kennedy and everything, we came within a hair's breadth of destroying civilization.
That's why I say
Moscow was destroyed. I mean, Napoleon was destroyed, you know, with a march on Moscow. That was existential to the army and everything. But the thing is, but even then there would have been survivors. It's modeling. You know, it's capability. There would have been survivors of the human species, maybe in New Guinea, a few scraggling survivors, if all those weapons had been unleashed in '62. It would have been the end of civilization. But there would have been the survivor of the species, okay? After 1970, apparently, when we reached, it was about that magic time or that time, apparently the weapons were such that there would not be, by modeling that makes sense scientifically, there wouldn't be a single human being alive. The whole evolutionary process would be stopped. That would be existential in my qualitative transformation, not quantitative. Do you think we've gotten over that and we're okay now as long as we can still keep killing each other with swords and bludgeons or something? Or has something happened on the positive side, like liberation or end time, and that might relate to the Shia thing, talking to the prophetic tradition that has been bastardized by the Jews and Christians without coming up with their...
Let me put it to you this way.
Son. Are we at the end time? Or a time of qualitative transformation?
The end has always been a long time coming.
Okay.
But I think...
Can I quote you?
Of course.
Yeah.
What I do think is this with the nuclear weapons, and I think this is the danger. I don't think it's... Could be wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the United States and Russia that are the problem. I think the problem is that or the real danger. It's possible they can use them too. It's possible. I mean, the United States did use the atom bomb.
They did?
Of course.
Yeah, of course they did. Yeah, they did, yeah. I said it wrong. Yeah. They did. Enunciation matters. Yeah,
exactly.
We only got a couple minutes left, so give us the rundown.
One radical group or one unstable regime, Pakistan and India.
Pakistan's very worrying, and I don't wonder with all those drones and whatnot, and Kashmir's still not being addressed. Yeah.
One goes off.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, you're not talking about anything rational. Yeah. Realize, don't try to rational.
You know, once you start that, it's not like a taxi cab. You can say,
yeah, right.
Wait at the corner, I want to get off.
Yeah, it's not rational.
It keeps going.
It does, you can't rewrite it. It's irrational.
It creates its own
like
dynamic.
Sarajevo in 1914.
It creates its own dynamic.
Right.
And that's the danger, I see.
But there is limitation in terms of our ability to be destructive, and those limitations seem to have been irrevocably crossed about 1970.
That could well be, but that's part of the irrationality that you talk about.
So the Chinese warn against living in an interesting time because it's going to be so goddamn, you're so challenging and so forth. I'm sorry, we got no chance to get over that. Listen, thank you for helping to clear things up a bit.
Well,
and I do wish you all the best on that trip to Iran and understanding things. It's really amazing. It's been like a pinball machine going in these last few days. And thanks for helping to clear that up. And thanks for all the good work that you've done. Your CV goes on forever, and the work you've done is really commended to be considered by one and all. And thanks, Stephen. Stephen Eric Bronner, political scientist extraordinaire, humanitarian extraordinaire, and happy to have been able to welcome to the program. We in Conversation invite you to tune in. We'll come back again, tomorrow. And thanks a lot, Stephen, for coming. Great to see you, and really good, and give my best to the family and all the gang that we have mutual contacts with and everything. They're all good people. Hope you get to Iran on that visit.
Me too.
Coming back tomorrow. Thanks for viewing. Coming back tomorrow. Thank you. Okay.